Texas governor pardons man convicted of killing protester at a 2020 BLM rally, Daniel Perry, which was a gross racist piece of who literally, even under the Texas courts, was judged by a jury of his peers and was found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in doing an act of premeditated murder. I think that was the charge, if I'm not mistaken. And yet, Governor Greg Abbott had some different opinions on the matter. Wonderful stuff there.
And just to remind you what happened, prosecutors say that Perry drove his SUV through a red light into a crowd of protesters in Austin.
Remember, dude, this is like textbook, okay? If you don't know anything, if you just like only know a couple things about Texas, you will probably come to the conclusion that like when a white man goes to a Black Lives Matter rally, okay, in his car and then shoots and kills one of the BLM protesters and then gets convicted of murder by a Texas court, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt, it probably is like pretty open and shut, right? It's probably pretty open and shut. If you don't know anything else, like, come on, bro. This is a open and shut case. This is black and white as it gets, okay? Doesn't the pardon imply that they're guilty, but the crime is okay? The pardon can be seen as like someone who was falsely imprisoned. It doesn't always mean that like, obviously you have to be convicted guilty to be pardoned. In this circumstance, they're saying that it shouldn't be a crime. That's what Governor Greg Abbott is saying. There was so much about Daniel Perry in the court case. Investigations were obviously conducted, and they found that he genuinely did have racist intent. Well, one, he was saying a whole bunch of anti-Semitic, whole bunch of Islamophobic, whole bunch of anti-black, trying to text teenagers in chat rooms. Like, this guy had it all. But the real reason why Governor Greg Abbott did this is because he wanted to say Daniel Perry did the right thing. Go to a Black Lives Matter protest in his car and then shoot and kill one of the protesters. The protester he killed, for the record, is white as well. He was armed and he was pushing his black wife in a wheelchair. He was the caregiver for his wife. And this dude straight up shot and killed him, got convicted in a Texas jury, and he still was pardoned by Governor Greg Abbott. Now, the reason why people in positions of power do stuff like this is to basically say, we will defend you. The institutions will ultimately defend you if you go out and do stuff like this. He openly also showcased his intent, by the way, Daniel Perry. This is one page of the 76 that were just released. Here, Daniel Perry says, I will only shoot the protesters in front and push the pedal to the metal. I might have to kill a few people on my way to work. They are rioting outside my apartment complex. Justin Smith, can you legally do so? If they attack me or try to pull me out of the car, then yes. If I just do it because I'm driving by, then no. Yeah, right, law. Make sure to use only one shot on the protesters, so if they try to flood you, you got enough rounds for them all. I will only shoot the ones in the front and push the pedal to the metal. You got that much control over your bloodlust? Law boy, have you matured? All you would beat the out of them, then rip a few. I would probably barely have ammo left over with this tactic. I have to conserve my ammo for the trip back to home. No protesters go near me or my car. Can you catch me a old school N-word, Spanish word, daddy? That is what I am hoping. Yay, says Justin Smith. That's the guy that was just pardoned. This is the reason why he got convicted, okay? It wasn't even like a Kyle Rittenhouse situation where they actually struck from the record Kyle Rittenhouse, the footage of him like looking at a bunch of black people outside of a CVS and being like, I'm gonna shoot them. Like where they literally struck that off the record. This is not vague. Don't say pretty vague still. What do you mean? If this is vague, there is nothing that you will ever be convinced of. This is literally a dude saying, I am going to go to a protest and shoot and kill black people with racist intent. I have racist intent and I'm fantasizing about killing black people and Black Lives Matter protesters. The idea that this is vague is insane to me. And you are wrong. It's not like a jury of his peers found that to be vague. A jury of his peers looked at that and went, okay, that's a little too racist for our taste. When you pardon a person like this, you're basically saying, yeah, no, I love what he did. I think what he did was good. And I want to make sure that, you know, if it happens again, I'll defend it again, implying that you want it to happen again.
Now that board unanimously voted to pardon Perry and restore his firearm rights earlier today.
Like, that dude can now have his gun again. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, this is just white supremacy in action, in full display.
But when the judge steps in with 2 big feet and undoes the will of citizen jurors A legitimate question arises. Is this based on the merits or is it based on some crass political calculation?
Yeah, it absolutely is based on crass political calculation. The calculation is, we like what Daniel Perry did. We actually think it's awesome that he went to a Black Lives Matter rally with racist intent to shoot BLM protesters. And he actually carried out this violent attack, which even a Texas jury unanimously agreed was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for racist intent and murder. And Governor Greg Abbott likes that and doesn't think that that's a bad thing, which is why he pardoned this person. Let me be very clear. Governor Greg Abbott is saying this is good. What he did, what Daniel Perry did, was good, and we want more of it. This was his statement. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles conducted an exhaustive review of U.S. Army Sergeant Daniel Perry's personal history and the facts surrounding the July 2020 incident and recommended a full pardon and restoration of full civil rights of citizenship. Among the voluminous files reviewed by the board, saw that he was also like a far-right neo-Nazi furry, among other things. They saw all of the text messages and were like, this is awesome. We like this. They considered the information provided by the Travis County District Attorney, the full investigative report on Daniel Perry, plus a review of the testimony provided at trial. Texas has one of the strongest stand your ground laws of self-defense that cannot be nullified by a jury or a progressive district attorney. I thank the board for its thorough investigation and I approve their pardon recommendation. It's insanely dangerous to give people like this the idea that there is no consequence for murdering people. The thin veil of rule of law is falling before our eyes. That is the whole point. I mean, this is the most violent version of exactly what happened at University of California, Los Angeles campus a couple weeks ago at this point. Students were peacefully demonstrating at an encampment. The university sent the police as they stood idly by and watched the racist violence against the pro-Palestinian peaceful demonstrators unfold. And then the very next day, the university used that violence that the students in the encampment experienced as a reason to then do state-sponsored violence. The goal there was to show everyone and anyone, if there is a violent lynch mob, then that's great. We will literally conduct and commit the very same desires of said violent lynch mob. This is not new in American history. This is not new at all in American history. This is exactly the same that happened time and time again in American history, both in contemporary U.S. history and also American history as a whole. What is state-sponsored violence you're referring to? Breaking up the encampment? Yes. Sending the police to violently apprehend and beat the out of the student protesters for peacefully demonstrating their First Amendment right. This is fascism, by the way. This is white supremacy and it's fascism. Straight up. Make no mistake. And it happens in many different ways, but this is one of the most glaringly obvious instances of American fascism and American white supremacy. The conservatives cheering this don't know what dangerous game they're playing. No, they're cheering this because they know exactly what the dangerous game is. Because if someone tried to do a stand your ground around Daniel Perry, they would go to jail. They would get the death penalty maybe. This is the dynamic, okay? This is why I always say you have to be very careful with the way you conduct yourself if you are on the left, if you're on a progressive side, if you're against the government in a meaningful way and not in like an edgy teenager kind of way where they're like, you're a progressive, you're woke. Of course, the government will never come after you because you're progressive and woke, and so is the government. This happened in the South during racist lynch mobs in general as well. Historically, the police almost always side with fascist demonstrators, defend fascist demonstrators, and rarely ever apprehend fascist demonstrators, no matter how violent they get. If you defend yourself against fascist demonstrators, and if you recall, this did happen under the Trump administration, just like this incident as well. Trump will send the marshals after you and execute you point blank and then flex on your dead body. This literally happened. The reversal of this already occurred, where an anti-fascist who also had a weapon shot and killed a Patriot Prayer Nazi. After that Patriot Prayer Nazi went over, Michael Reinoehl was his name, yes. A Patriot Prayer Nazi went over with bear mace and was like attacking BLM protesters. Michael Reinoehl was hunted down by marshals directed by Donald Trump, who demanded his execution, and he got his execution. Donald Trump then turned around and said, look how awesome it is that we executed Michael Reinoehl. The idea that there is a equal standard under the law when it comes to fascist violence and anti-fascist defense against said fascist violence is ludicrous, is ridiculous. The reason why libertarians and fascists alike love posting the "don't tread on me" while simultaneously demanding that the police are more militant and more violent is because they live with the comfort of knowing that the state, which has a monopoly on violence, will always side with them when push comes to shove, will always defend them. That's precisely why January 6th was a unique moment. Not January 6th's immediate aftermath, of course, because the police didn't do on January 6th for the most part, with the exception of shooting and killing Ashley Babbitt, which I am still very critical of for the record. Literally were shocked that there were any apprehensions after the fact, any investigations conducted after the fact, because they operated with the understanding that, like, what do you mean? This is my... Like, you're supposed to straight up be on my side. You're supposed to look the other way when I do violence, and you're supposed to defend me and join hands, as a matter of fact, when I do the violence. Daniel Perry bragged about killing a homeless man by accident. A review of Daniel Perry's cell phone extraction revealed native messages exchanged between Daniel Perry and a phone number saved in the device as Justin Smith on or about March 30th. Outgoing message: I killed a homeless man by accident. Outgoing message: the police already know and they let me go. Justin Smith. Huh. Outgoing message: am I racist for thinking the way Black Lives Matter movement is like a bunch of monkeys flinging at a zoo due to the fact that they demand white people give their houses to a poor black family and the way their protests always seem to turn violent? Outgoing message: for example, my parents own a 4-bedroom house and the BLM movement believe that my parents should give their house to a poor black family and pretty much live in a 1-bedroom house that they should buy with money they don't have. Pure fantasy, but he believes it to be true. Here's Daniel Perry messaging someone named Rainbow about sleeping over together. Rainbow says they will get their driver's license on August 8th. Outgoing message: we can do that. How soon can you get ready? Rainbow says, like 15 minutes. I am on my way. Outgoing message: I am here. It should be noted that the review of Daniel Perry's cell phone extraction revealed messages between WhatsApp account Perry Daniel owner and WhatsApp account Rainbow on or about July 24th, 2020. On July 24th, 2020, an incoming message from Rainbow says, August 8th, I get my driver's license. There's an outgoing message back from Perry of the highlights. I'm trying to imagine the reaction from the right, and to be honest, from the media too. If a Democratic governor just pardoned a man found guilty of murder who had posted on social media, too bad we can't get paid for hunting Jews in Europe. Perry posted the above, but for Muslims. The New York Times also did an analysis, by the way, of how a U.S. task force killed an Antifa activist. What happens to this country? This is something to always pay attention to. Donald Trump, remember, for Mike Reinoehl, cheered his killing as retribution. Governor Greg Abbott, by the way, literally, again, the guy that he personally pardoned, faces the question of whether to sign the pardon of a man who texted a 16-year-old, I am going to bed, come up with a reason why I should be your boyfriend before I wake up, to a 16-year-old. He was routinely texting explicitly with 16-year-olds. He hit the full Monty. Anyway, here, I want to show you guys
like
this.
The beginning of a war.
This is Mike Reinoehl giving an interview before he gets killed by U.S. Marshals.
I see a civil war right around the corner.
At 8:40 Pacific Standard Time, President Trump tweets, "Why aren't the Portland police arresting the cold-blooded killer? Do your job and do it fast. Everybody knows who this thug is." The president was apparently unaware that Reinoehl was already dead.
Here's Donald Trump gloating.
We sent in the U.S. Marshals. 15 minutes it was over. 15 minutes it was over. We got him. They knew who he was. They didn't want to arrest him. And 15 minutes that ended. Anyway.
Yep. Now, this person that I'm talking about that Donald Trump is gleefully cheering on the execution of, the state-sponsored execution of, was an anti-fascist and not a fascist. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I want you to understand the double standard. When a Nazi piece of goes to a BLM rally, openly states his desires to kill BLM protesters, fantasizes about it, and then acts out on those desires. The Texas governor, after a jury of this person's peers finds him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, pardons him. When an anti-fascist, on the other hand, is literally at a Black Lives Matter protest providing security and fires at a Nazi, like an actual out and about patriot prayer Nazi who is attacking the Black Lives Matter protesters, he gets executed by the marshals. And then Donald Trump flexes that he demanded the execution of this person. This is the United States of America. If you are looking for some kind of consistency here, the only consistent principle is white supremacy. The problem is, for a brief period of time, America tried to act like there was equal treatment under the law for anyone and everyone that violates the law. There is no equal treatment. Reconstruction era Klan violence. They think that that is fine. They find it okay to outsource the state violence to paramilitaries, to people who will take matters into their own hands.
Perry. In it, Detective Fugit had Perry demonstrate how Foster carried his rifle.
How high did that barrel come up? Went up probably about right there. Okay, was it aimed at you? I believe it was aimed at, I believe he was going to aim it at me. I didn't want to give him a chance to aim at me, you know?
And then what?
He openly mentions that the dude is not even brandishing, by the way, or pointing the weapon at him. That's the other part about it.
Perry said he shot 5 times. He believes the whole encounter was less than 15 seconds.
The dude he shot, by the way, was pushing his quadriplegic wife. He was the caretaker of his quadriplegic wife. And this scumbag shot and killed him and openly stated his intentions to shoot and kill BLM protesters. It is such a classic case of open and shut racist murder. He had racist intent. The dude he shot and killed was white. His goal, however, was to go and shoot BLM protesters, not paraplegic, quadriplegic. As far as I understand, due to medical negligence, they had to amputate her hands and her legs. Every part of this story has an element of white supremacy and is the reason why white supremacy is a systemic issue. You can try to individualize it all day, every day, whichever way you want to. What are the chances of him reoffending? I mean, dude, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't he? He got the clear. He got the go ahead. Why shouldn't he? And it's not just him. I mean, they literally fully restored his civil rights, as in gave him his gun back and his gun rights. And that in and of itself is just like a clear-cut indication that the federal government, I mean, the Texas state government is basically saying, no, go off, King. It is also a message to anyone and everyone that wants to take matters in their own hands. You see a Palestinian rally going on, you know what I mean? Get in there, stand your ground. You see another Black Lives Matter rally or Black Lives Matter protest going on, get in there, stand your ground. Take matters into your own hands. Yeah, it's the Republicans that are letting out the violent criminals on our streets. But of course, the kind of violence that they're doing is against black people and allies of black people in general, people who are upset about the disproportionate violence black people are experiencing in the hands of the police state. So killing them is perfectly permissible in the eyes of many in this country's positions of power.
And his attorneys argue that because Foster was armed, Perry was acting in self-defense. Governor Greg Abbott saying in a statement just last hour, Texas has, in his words, one of the strongest stand your ground laws in the country.
If Garrett Foster actually had his weapon safety off, which he didn't, okay, and aimed it towards Daniel Perry and shot and killed him, you know his would be in prison right now. Make no mistake. He would absolutely be in prison, despite the fact that it is obvious that Daniel Perry had criminal intent. He literally drove his car towards BLM protesters. He wasn't just like driving around in his Uber. He openly stated that he was looking for protests and that if given the opportunity, he would shoot and kill them because it would be a legal kill. This concept is basically baked into right-wing reactionary politics. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse and his case was seen as a pivotal moment for many people. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse is still celebrated as a hero by right-wingers. Perhaps the best indication that someone is a right-winger is if they say, no, what Kyle Rittenhouse did is awesome and it's great. It is the fantasy, the right-wing fantasy, the fascist fantasy that like you can get a legal kill by going to one of these protests, get to feel that thrill of killing someone who you perceive as your ideological enemy, and then the state will defend you in that situation. It is a very common fantasy, so much so that if you remember, before Charlottesville, Every single right-wing outlet, from Daily Wire to the Daily Caller, all of them had compilations of right-wingers driving over protesters, things of that nature. It is a wet dream for right-wingers to kill someone with a gun in a self-defense style situation. That is literally what they constantly talk about in right-wing forums. That is constantly egged on by right-wing media. Guys, Tom Cotton literally said you should throw protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, off of a bridge. Wait, the US is so much like Israel? Yeah, of course. It's fascism. That's my point all the time. When I say America sucks for these kinds of reasons, people don't immediately hit me with a "you're anti-white, anti-Christian," except they do kind of. They do literally say that. So I guess in that sense, it's identical to Israel in that regard. Doesn't self-defense work here, though? No. You are engaging in an offensive act. You are driving in a car to go to a Black Lives Matter rally with the specific intent of shooting and then running over BLM protesters. You have stated this intent in text messages. There's a difference between being at a Black Lives Matter rally as a BLM demonstrator who is armed, which is legal in the state of Texas. I don't think it's a good idea to bring guns to a protest. I've talked about this even during this conversation, but in general, if he had a gun, he most likely still would have been shot. If he didn't have a gun, he most likely still would have been shot. It doesn't matter. This guy wanted to kill anyone that was at the BLM rally, at the BLM protest. It's not even a thing that is, controversial for me to talk about, because like a criminal justice system that is oftentimes openly white supremacist still found this man guilty in the state of Texas too.